Hey everybody, Ty here. Hope everyone's doing well. So, we haven't had much of a chance to really talk about the tropics right now, but on the bright side, there hasn't been a whole lot to talk about. As it stands right now, we're still expected to have an above normal season, so of course we're still going to have to keep tabs on this, but at least in the short to medium term, not really expecting a whole lot of anything in the Atlantic right now. During this time of year, it stays pretty quiet. We average about one storm every couple of years for the month of June. And the last couple of Junes have been pretty busy, so it's a pretty welcome break, I would say, at this point. Now, the reasons as to why that is due in large part to the wind shear that we have across the board here. We're also going to do a little model comparison here. So we have the GFS ensemble and the Euro here. I'm going to put both of these in motion so you can see exactly what's going on here. These areas in the red are going to be the areas that have the strongest wind shear. The areas in the blue and the clear color here are going to be the areas where the wind shear is lightest. Our main point of interest during this time of year when it comes to tropical development, it's mainly going to be over towards the coastlines here, maybe towards the far north and northwestern parts of the Caribbean. Typically during this early part of the season, the main development areas, I wouldn't expect a whole lot out of that. But nonetheless, we'll pay attention to all areas here. But you'll notice a common denominator between both the GFS and the Euro ensemble is that there is a lot of wind shear. We're in a pattern right now where the wind shear is going to be pretty dominant for what looks to honestly be throughout the rest of the month. At this point, I would say that while I wouldn't guarantee it, it seems like the chances of storm development are pretty low. And obviously, things can change. If we're looking at regular operational weather models like what we normally show for our forecast videos over the low 48, they can change, so can the ensembles. So take it with a grain of salt what you're seeing here. But at least in the short term, though, we're not looking too bad in the ways of tropical development. If there's anything that we'll watch, it's for any storm systems that roll through with an adjacent feature to the south here. If anything makes its way offshore and organizes, if it can withstand the wind shear, then maybe we might get some development. It would at best probably be a weak tropical storm right now. So let's go ahead and shift our attention over to the humidity here as a whole. So what we're going to be looking at here is we're going to be looking at our moist air and our dry air, of course. We're looking at how much moisture is in the atmosphere because obviously tropical systems need plenty of moisture. So we're going to put these in a loop as well. And one thing you'll notice here is we're battling with a little bit of dry air over here towards the Gulf. It's still staying pretty moist for the most part. Any other areas here, it's way too dry to hospit any sort of tropical development. Right now, we aren't seeing any tropical waves coming off of West Africa, which is usually our point of interest as we get later into the year. And this is pretty much a common occurrence as we start out the season. There is this little area over here near the equator where we get pretty busy as well. But as of right now, I wouldn't be too concerned with anything. So one other thing I'm going to say as well is that if you were to go ahead and look at this screen here on the GFS particularly, one common thread with the GFS that I've noticed is that it tends to try to cook up something in the long run, but it's only the GFS that tends to show this. So if we don't have a lot of model agreement, it doesn't give me a lot of confidence in that system developing. It has plenty of low pressures that pop up here, but nothing really manifests out of this until we get towards the back half of the run, where we start to see a little system try to form up here. And it would form up into a hurricane, in theory. Now, there is a particular bias that would take me a while to kind of get into here. I'm trying to keep this video short and sweet since the last few have been pretty long, but GFS has a particular bias here that ends up developing some of these storms. Not saying that the GFS is a bad model, but this is a pretty common occurrence in regards to the tropics here. Not saying that this area over here couldn't produce something in the long run here, but this is nothing that I would be concerned about in the short run. Because if you look over here towards the Euro, and if you look at the time range here, you do see a couple of low pressures develop here and there, but not much really comes of it. And by the time we move further along, I'm going to speed this up just a hair. you can see by the time we get towards that 144-hour range where they had a storm system developing on GFS, you don't see it on the Euro. In fact, the Euro is more aggressive with the dry air here in the Gulf and over towards the Caribbean, especially towards the southern part of the Caribbean. So, not all that concerned in regards to tropical development in the short term. Long term, it's a little bit more questionable there. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at the ensemble members, kind of get a good idea of what we could expect in the long range here. So obviously, we're going to have the GFS and Euro ensembles in a loop here, of course. So, of course, a real point of interest sometimes, depending on how the upper level winds are set up, could even sometimes be the Eastern Pacific. And really at this point, that's where I think our best chance of any sort of tropical development would occur, is if we had a storm system that develops here to the east and then sneaks over the Yucatan into the Gulf, thus increasing chances for storm development. It's not uncommon to have something like that happen, but during this time of year, it's a little bit more few and far in between. Nonetheless, attention's still going to have to be paid towards this area as we progress further and further into the season. The Eastern Pacific has already been pretty active. They've had several named storms. No considerable impacts of note as of right now, and we're hoping that'll continue that way. But anywhere over towards the Yucatan, and if any of you are watching over there, hello. But as of right now, I wouldn't expect any major storms over here from the Eastern Pacific or really over towards the Atlantic right now. It's just really not time yet. The environment's not suited for tropical development in the long range here. So again, Eastern Pacific is a point of interest here, and then as we go further along, you can see that not really a whole lot happening there. Now if we go to the GFS again, it seems like the GFS family of models here, whether it's the ensemble or the operational models, seem to favor this area in regards to development. That's in particular, I think, because of that bias in regards to the actual setup over towards these regions where we have those issues with dry air and also the wind shear. I do think that that's going to keep things a little bit more hampered down, which again, as I mentioned before, isn't all that uncommon for this season. So we'll take this with a grain of salt and we'll see what happens next. But at least in the short term, if you're planning a cruise right now, you don't really have a whole lot to worry about here. So lastly, we're going to use a combination of models once more. We're going to go to this website here called Weather Nerds, and I don't know why it has me all the way over towards Asia right now. I want to look at the North Atlantic here. If we watch this real closely, again, and this kind of further drives home my point that I'm not expecting a whole lot over towards the Atlantic within the next 10 days here. I don't have a whole lot of confidence in that. There's very few ensemble members over there towards the Yucatan, which will be our point of interest. Notice, however, again, as I mentioned before, over here towards the Eastern Pacific, a lot of activity expected once again. Now, there are a few models that do push this over towards the Yucatan and maybe into Central America as a whole here. That might warrant a little bit of attention if you're within the country itself. But as far as the lower 48 right now, I wouldn't be too worried about much of anything from this point. So that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. You found it useful. It's a quicker one for you. Make sure you guys smash that like button, decimate that subscribe button, obliterate that share button. I'll see you guys with the next one. Till then, take care and have a wonderful rest of your Thursday.